Take your ka and your jaw and sync them together in perfect harmony as we spin them forward into blurs of sparkling light. Backwards, ka jaw. Horizontal clockwise. Counterclockwise. Vertical clockwise. Counterclockwise. Ka jaw in perfect sync and harmony together. Add the Z. Z ka jaw. Forward. Backwards, horizontal clockwise, counterclockwise, vertical clockwise, counterclockwise, zika jaw, in perfect sync, in perfect harmony. Samara.
Heavenly Father and Mother, we're so thankful for this opportunity to gather together with our brothers and sisters around the world. We love you and we appreciate all of our many blessings. Please be with us, that your spirit uplift and expand us, that we are edified by one another. We're so thankful for Philos, who's coming to speak to us today, and all the wisdom he imparts. We say these things in the name of our brother Yeshua. So be it.
So be it. Okay, welcome everybody. So today, Philos is going to talk to us, and because Philos has a kind of a strange accent, even people who English is their first language sometimes have a difficulty understanding him. So Samara, I'm going to have to promise that any parts that are indecipherable in his talk, when she does the video, she'll put some of the words there so it's clear what he's saying.
Yeah, and I've been trying to upload videos all week. I've got some done, and our internet speed's just too slow. So what I think I'm going to do is take a day each week and go into town to the
coffee shop.
We have the fast internet speed.
Yeah, our upload speed is between 2 and 4 megabytes per second.
Oh no, it's like 0.5.
Oh, 0.5. Wow. Gets even worse. So anyway, without further ado, we will ask Philos to come in. And Samara, if you'd say a little prayer for that.
Okay. Heavenly Father and Mother, we're so thankful for the opportunity to speak with Philos. We're so grateful for Broswin's ability to communicate in this way, and Philos's willingness to help us out, to share his wisdom. And we ask that your light that we be in your light, to take what he speaks about today and apply it to our lives. In Yeshua's name, so be it.
So be it.
So be it.
At least I think, I forget what he's speaking about, but hopefully we can apply it to our lives.
All right, I need to come quietly so I can get Philos in. Greetings, everyone.
Hello.
Oh.
This is exciting. I've gotten to be on television.
Yeah, you're a star.
Yes, well, anyway. All right, I'm very grateful to be here. I'm glad to be able to speak with everyone, and I hope you can understand me when I speak to you. And I know that I had an agenda that I was going to talk about, but I don't remember what it was. So if you want to remind me, and I can talk about that subject then when you remind me. So what do you want to hear about first from that list that was posted earlier?
Well, the two things I remember are Skinwalker Ranch and sex.
Very excellent subjects, both of these.
And anything about the Taz?
Just one at a time. So
Okay.
one thing at a time. So what do you want me to talk about first?
We'll leave it to you.
No.
Skinwalker Ranch.
Skinwalker Ranch. Thank you very much.
Has anybody had a chance to watch any of
The episodes?
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got through 2 seasons.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
So you know a little
Yeah.
bit there. Okay.
It's quite interesting.
Yep.
Very interesting. Yep.
So
Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
talk a little bit about that then for your
Great.
greater insight of that. All right, so you have the Skinwalker Ranch, and of course, it's a television show. And so because it's a television show, they dramatize everything, and it's a reality show, so they repeat everything as if you don't remember the first part that you heard already. Of course, if they didn't do that, each show would only be about 10 minutes long. But so what is special about that place versus any other place is actually, as you get into the seasons, I think they're going to discover some things that are correct. But what I wanted to caution you about is to remember that it's a television show that's purpose is to get you to watch the television show. And so they overly dramatize things, and they make supposedly they're doing their experiments according to the quote scientific method, but in fact they're not doing their experiments according to the scientific method by any stretch of the imagination. And so you need to be aware of that scientific method. What that means is that you do not have a predetermined thing you're trying to discover. You're just doing experiments, and you're observing what the results of those experiments are, and you must have, of course, a control that is the neutral, so you have something to compare to. And as I've tuned in, as Ambrosian has watched this show for the first season, and I've been disappointed in their way that they do that. But from what I've seen so far, and I have not had the opportunity to watch all the episodes, so I don't know what's in the future, but I have been able to tune in to most of the first, second season that Ambrosian has watched. And I will say that 90% of what they speculate about is not correct. But there is 10% that is very correct. And so I just want to tell you, those of you who are watching this show, what is correct and what you can then look for with greater insight as they're doing explorations and experimentations. And the first thing is, I'm just going to tell you what is there. And then you can just remember that, even take notes of that, so that as you watch that show, you'll be able to know when they're talking about things that are valid versus things that are not valid. All right, so there's all these phenomena that occur and that have been recorded on video and other scientific instruments. And by the way, speaking of scientific instruments, one of the very good ones that you can have that they use on that show, and I actually recommend that each one of you get one of these. It's called a tri-field meter, and it measures magnetic energy, electronic energy, and radio frequency type energies. And it's the most useful device. And there's different types that you can get, that you can buy, and they're not expensive. But in your everyday life, even if you're not searching for paranormal activities, they're very useful in your own home. So one of the, and I'm getting off on a tangent here, which I tend to do a lot. So if I get too far away, pull me back. And in any case, there is a challenge living in the modern world with electromagnetic frequency energy that is too close to you and can cause not just electrical, your body's an electrical being. And so if you have other energies that are too close to you, it disrupts that electrical flow in your body. And that can cause confusion. It can cause your brain to stop working very well. So you're trying to work on a problem and you simply can't concentrate on it. It can also actually cause physical problems if you're exposed too long to it, such as cancer. And in your life, if you have one of your tri-field meters, for instance, right now we're sitting in front of the television set here with the computer. And if you have a tri-field meter, you can turn it on and you can immediately see where you're sitting right here, where I'm sitting right here. What's the energies that are affecting, that are coming and hitting my body right now? You can see that very easily with the tri-field meter. Well, more importantly, is you see your needle or your digital readout, whichever type you have, and you'll see it move into the upward area, and you can move your meter around your room, and you can see where your problem arises. So for instance, sitting in front of a computer like this, if you look at your computers, whether it's a laptop or a desktop, you'll see the power card that goes into the computer, and then that plugs into the wall. And normally, most computers in between the plug on the computer and the plug in the wall are going to have a little electrical device that's kind of rectangular. That puts out a tremendous amount of harmful EMFs. And so if you have your tri-field meter, you'll see that as you get closer to that device, the meter goes off the scale. That's very great, reading that. But so that tells you that you want to make sure that that component of your computer is as far away from you as it can possibly be. And then you'll see that if you put it far away and you hold your meter where you're sitting, oh, well, everything's fine now. But if you're sitting with your laptop here and that little device is right next to the laptop that's in the electrical connection, and now you measure, you're going to be off the scale. You're going to be not in a good place. So please, if I recommend strongly that everyone have one of those tri-field meters. And the other thing is that where you sleep, that's very important when you sleep that you don't have any type of electrical or any type of energies that are man-made that are bombarding you for the whole time you're sleeping in your bed. So again, the tri-field meter can go around your room, around where you sleep, and make sure that right where you sleep is a very neutral place, that there's not any type of electromagnetic energies coming in. Now, I know I got off on that tangent for a reason, but I'm not sure I can remember what it was. So going back to the Skinwalker Ranch, so I apologize for my divergence there. Going back to the Skinwalker Ranch, they get a lot of measurements with their little instruments, their tri-field meters, the dust meters, all of those type of things. Measure radiation, measure electrical waves, radio waves, cell phone waves. So here's a couple of things to remember. Number one, there are legitimate things that they measure. There are legitimate energies that they can't explain, that are in fact generated by sources on the Skinwalker Ranch. Well, there's a lot of things, as this goes back to the scientific method, there's a lot of things that they get readings for that have effects that are caused by their own equipment. So for instance, all of these people that you see in the show, they're all wearing little microphones on their lapels, and then they have little radio transmitters that are stuck in their back pockets. And these things are putting out electromagnetic waves that are registered oftentimes on their devices. And they don't talk about that. Oh, look, our device is going crazy. Well, maybe it's going crazy because it's a foot away from the radio transmitter in your back pocket. This is the type of thing, when I said they don't do scientific method, is that they look and say, oh, this is exciting, and I don't understand that, and I've never seen anything like that before. And well, a scientific method would say, well, what else could be causing this? And so, for instance, they have a fellow, a big guy with red hair, kind of like the fellow you have here, Brother Kiel, a little more stocky than him, but same complexion and red hair. And I'm sorry, getting divergent again. Anyway, and he said, oh, look at my phone, it's gone crazy. And it's, when you look, wow, that phone is really gone crazy all over the place, the cell phone. And then they say, well, does that ever happen before? No, it never happened before, only here. And that may be true, and maybe it doesn't happen anywhere, but they jump to conclusions about, well, that's something strange here that's causing that. And it may not be that, oh, it could be something mechanical with the phone still. And so they don't look for other reasons. Now, what are the real reasons that things occur there? All right. Number one is that, yes, that place, not just that ranch, but that entire valley, that Uinta Valley, was created by a large asteroid impact many millions of years ago. And that particular asteroid had a great deal of metallic content in it, and still does. And there's large portions of that. It didn't hit as one, it broke into several very large pieces. And that is buried in many places, not just on that Skinwalker Ranch, but throughout that Uinta Valley area. There's the large asteroid pieces that are buried under the ground, typically about 25 feet down, but sometimes it's deeper, depends on the type of surface that it hit. Can be 25 feet down, some as shallow as 15 feet, but sometimes as deep as 100 feet. It depends on what kind of ground, if it was soft, hard, rocky, whatever, it hit originally. Well, this very large metallic meteor, was an asteroid actually, this affects all types of magnetic things. So if someone has a compass, for instance, and they're near that one of those large metallic sources, then that compass is not going to read correctly. It doesn't matter whether it's a regular compass or a digital compass, it's going to be the same. And if they have other devices that are measuring electrical things that could be affected by that large mass, or gravitational things, see, so gravity is affected by the density of the ground around it, especially if it's metallic. So where they're near a large metallic source, then they're going to have all kinds of strange readings. That's number one. Number two, as I saw in one of the recent episodes that Brosen was watching just the other day, as they were drilling a hole, and they discovered, yes, that there is moving water not very far under the ground at that particular location. And this is a key part to remember. A lot of the things that they attribute to being paranormal activity is actually just this water that flows under the property. The property is in the bottom of the valley. There's a plateau up above it, and the whole ground is very salty, and salt conducts electricity. And so if you have salty water, and if you have a big rainstorm, and that water percolates down through the ground, and then it starts flowing across the ground downhill, that's going to create all kinds of electrical charges where that water's flowing. And it's going to be able to be read on the machines. But they of course, they see that as being something that's paranormal. It's not paranormal, it's perfectly natural. Now, what are some of the other phenomena? So something you don't see, I don't think I've ever seen in any of those episodes that Ambrose watched, at any of the plateau, if you go, and I'm not sure even you can see it on Google Earth, so I'm just going to tell you, but on that plateau, you see the Skinwalker Ridge, and then that ridge leads to a very flat plateau above it. On that plateau, varying between a half a mile and a mile away from the edge where you see all the things where they're climbing up the thing. Anyway, about half a mile to a mile, depends upon the location, how close it is. You'll see an extremely, extremely high power electrical transmission lines that run in a straight line across that plateau. Now, when we're talking about EMFs, I hope that none of you live anywhere close to a high power transmission line. These things are extremely dangerous to your energy, extremely dangerous to your health. Extremely. I can't say that a big enough word. And if you have the high power type of ones that are by the Skinwalker Ranch, are so powerful that if you took a fluorescent light bulb, not attached to anything, just the light bulb by itself, and you held it in your hand, and there's nothing on either end, it's just the light bulb, a fluorescent tube, and you started walking towards that high power line, when you're as far as 100 feet away from it, that light bulb would light up because the power is so great. 100 feet away, that's transmitting through the air that it lights the fluorescent light bulb up. So that's very powerful. So a lot of the phenomena that they think they see is actually caused by those high power lines. So for instance, if it rains, okay, so the rain is falling through that high power line area, and it's going through the salty ground, which is conductive of electricity. So now you're going to have extremely highly charged water, number one. Number two, when they see that, for instance, oh, look, there's a light going across the sky right above the mesa. Well, if it's a light way up in the sky, well, that's something different. But if it's a light that's going right across the mesa, or the mesa seems to light up itself, this is always caused by something related to those high-powered lines. And so when you have certain weather phenomena that occurs, it can cause electrical discharges in the clouds, in the air, that make light seem to appear, make light seem to travel. And so don't confuse things that are actually naturally occurring with things that actually are paranormal. So what are the paranormal things that are of the Skinwalker Ranch? And am I talking too much? Am I talking too long? Yeah, I don't want to keep people time too much.
You can't talk too long.
All right, because I get long-winded. I apologize for that, but it's just my nature. I can't help it. So anyway, there are 5, and they have been there for before any humans were ever there. There are 5 portal openings that all occur in that 500-acre Skinwalker Ranch, and that is significant. So, as you know from portals, and again, this is a great time to have your tri-field meter. Your tri-field meter can measure when portals open and close. How does it measure that? Well, you put it on a magnetic setting, because whenever one of these portals open, there's always a change in the magnetic field. But it's not something that, the way you can tell whether it's a portal that's opened or if it's some other magnetic aberration is when you I'm going to assume you have a tri-field meter that has a needle on it, but you can also have digital ones as well. If it's a true portal that's opened up or has even opened up recently and is closed, there'll be some remnant energy remains for at least a day. Then when you're there by the portal entrance, the needle of the tri-field meter will be going back and forth like this, like that. And it won't be going, oh, look, it's getting greater, it's getting greater, it's getting greater. No, that's not a portal. So if you see it, oh, it's getting greater, it's getting greater, it's getting greater, but that's not a portal. It can be something else that's significant, but it's not a portal. Portals always have this great fluctuation in magnetic energy that's flipping over all the time. So on your tri-field meter, if it's a portal, then the needle's going to be moving back and forth like that. If it's something different, some other type of energy source, not a portal, that then the needle will just start increasing slowly and going up to a higher level. And then it's a matter of determining, well, where's that higher energy coming from? But don't misconstrue that that's coming from the particle, because it's not. It's coming from something else. So because you have these 5 particles all having opening on this 500-acre ranch, which is about a square mile, almost a square mile in size. It's not square though, the ranch goes all over the place. But in any case, whenever you have that type of occurrence, it's not common to have that many particles opening. Now, what's the deal about a particle opening? Who cares about a particle opening? Well, you care because these particles are leading to other worlds. And some of those other worlds are very much like Earth. The air composition is the same or similar. So if you were to go through that particle, you'd be able to go to that planet, and the temperature would be okay, and the amount of oxygen in the air would be okay. So those type of particles are benign as far as energy. That doesn't mean that there can't still be denizens of those worlds that come through those particles that are not very friendly to you. But that's another thing we'll talk about in a second. But going from the energy standpoint, there are also particles that lead to worlds that are quite toxic to your world environmentally. So for instance, they may be a very radioactive world. The whole world's radioactive. So that particle opens up, it lets radioactive energy come through the particle. It may be a toxic environment. So for instance, in your environment here on Earth, you have basically about 21% oxygen and the rest mostly nitrogen. That's your atmosphere that you breathe and your body's used to. There may be worlds that the air that's coming through is neither of those gases. Maybe there's no oxygen, maybe there's no nitrogen, and it might even be something flammable. Maybe it's a hydrogen world. So it comes to, or helium world, and it comes through, and that's flammable gas in your world. And so all of a sudden you see a ball of fire. Well, what caused that ball of fire just to come popping up out of nowhere? And I don't know if they see things like that on the Skinwalker Ranch or not, because I haven't watched all their episodes. I haven't looked at the Skinwalker Ranch for 20 years or more. But balls of fire that seem to come from nowhere are probably very highly likely particles that are coming from worlds that are hydrogen or helium worlds, or combine both of those gases. So when they come through, if there's any type of ignition source nearby on Earth where that particle opens, then that's going to ignite a flame. And if it's a constant flame, that means that particle's still open. If it makes a big burst of flame, but then it's gone, that means the particle was quick, open, shut, got ignited, and was gone. Okay, so I'm getting long-winded even for me. All right, so anyway, so I want to be clear on that. I'm going to think what else is important. So the particles, beasts that come through. All right, so listen, let me go to the cattle mutilations. So part of the big theme of this location is cattle mutilations. So I'm going to tell you a lot of history about that, so you have a better understanding of it. So there are documented reports in photographs from the Skinwalker Ranch, and not just the Skinwalker Ranch, but all the ranches around that area, of cattle mutilations, where cows were killed and they were torn up. And occasionally, when a particle is open, depending on where it is open, a beast might come through that particle from another world that is a very angry beast, not happy to be coming through a portal and going to someplace it doesn't know. And in its anger, when it comes through, it may, if it comes through and there's a cow right in front of it, it may rip that cow to shreds and kill it very quick. But that's not what we're talking about on the Skinwalker Ranch. I mean, that occurs, and that's occurred all over the Uinta Valley at different ranches, not just this ranch. And so don't confuse that type of cattle death and mutilation from, because that can occur from either predators that are on Earth itself. There might be a bear that's right there. There's, oh, I'm going to kill that cow or whatever. Or it could be a being or a beast coming from another world. But don't confuse that with the ones that are the surgically removed ones. All right. So on very, very rare occasion, there have been aliens that have come to place, not just the Skinwalker Ranch, but places all over the world that the same type of thing happens, but where they're doing basically, oh, let's take this eyeball and take a good, better look at it. So they'll take out the eyeball and they'll take it up and they'll go examine it more. And it's not a big deal for them. Many of the things that they experiment for and they look for, most of them can actually be explained by 100% natural physics. So for instance, if salty water is running underground, it's going to affect magnetic compasses and other things that measure electrical fields, magnetic fields, radio fields. All of things can be affected. If you have a large metallic mass under the ground, again, that is going to affect gravity. It's going to affect heat. It's going to affect electrical. All of these things are going to be measurable, but they don't know the source. So what's going to happen, because you're dealing with metallic objects, large metallic objects, is that if they ever actually go and drill with a true drill to drill into the ground, and they're over one of these areas, now there's a very large mass underneath that mesa. So you see that Skinwalker ridge there that runs all along in a long length like that. And if you look closely there, you're going to see that there's so many big rocks that are all cracked, and there's so much broken rock everywhere that's just come down. Well, why is there so much broken rock? This is not just eroded rock. If it was eroded rock, eroded off, it would be all rounded and everything. It's just very angular. So it was broken suddenly. And so why was it broken suddenly? Because a large part of the asteroid is buried underneath that ridge, right at the edge there, right underneath. And so that's what caused that uplifting and rapid breaking of all the rocks there. That's why you see that type of formation. And so if they ever do any drilling underneath that ridge and they go down, they're going to hit at some point, because it's a very large mass of the asteroid. They're going to hit that, and it's going to break the drills, because they're not going to be able to go through the metal. The drills are designed to go through earth and rocks that aren't too big or soft, too hard. But when they hit a large metallic mass, that's going to be the end of their drill, the end of their drilling anyway. So anyway, hopefully at some point they're going to do something like that, and you'll be able to see the results. See, did I cover all of that?
Well, what was something else?
I thought something interesting that you said when you were talking about the aliens mining the asteroid out of the ground,
okay,
which
yes.
was
All right, so
created a lot of those caverns.
Yeah, okay. So that's true too. All right, so I think everyone's probably watched the Star Trek show where they beam people around and things, they can beam things. Well, that's actually a true technology with a lot of alien races. It's not, so it's always interesting to watch how science fiction in your media actually depicts reality. So they're very future seeing here, the writers who write those shows, because they actually are writing things that are true in reality. So anyway, that whole concept of a transporter to be able to dematerialize atomically an object and then rematerialize it somewhere else is an existing technology. Not here for your planet, but many alien races have that type of technology. And so the asteroid that hit this area about 10 million years ago, that asteroid is composed of a lot of different types of metals. Now, most asteroids or meteors that hit the Earth that are metallic in nature are mostly iron and nickel. But this particular asteroid actually has a lot of rare elements that are part of it. And because of that, it has value. It would have value to the Earth people. If the people who own that Skinwalker Ranch, if they find one of these big sources, they'll have millions and millions of dollars from all of the rare metals that are part of it. But I probably shouldn't say that, because then they're going to watch my show and then they'll to look for that to make money. But in any case, the aliens, they do like that type of thing. And so they'll find one of these large masses of if it's not too big, they can't do great big ones, but they'll do ones that are just the right size that they can transport, and they'll just basically beam them out of the ground and beam them up to their ship, and what's left is a cavern underground where that piece of asteroid was that's not there anymore. And depending upon the shape of the asteroid, it may just all collapse, and then they may have a sinkhole up above, or if it's sufficiently dome shape that it can support itself. It's just left with a cavern. And over time, the water running through there, it enlarges the cavern, and they get what they think are natural caverns, but they're actually not natural caverns. They started out as asteroids, that pieces that aren't there anymore. So does that answer that question?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So
Great.
anything else on that subject before I go to the next subject?
Well, anybody that's watched the show, do you have any questions about anything that you've seen that
hasn't been covered?
right?
Yeah, I have a question. When one of the characters, I mean, one of the individuals that was there was digging, he had some kind of something happened to his head. His scalp was
another part you're talking about with a little bulge up there on the top.
Yes. Yeah. Was that part of him drilling those from the asteroid, the energy from the asteroid itself, and he dragged that apart where he kind of activated that, and his body couldn't take that energy? Was that from that?
Remember, and it may not have been from that actual event that you saw, but perhaps he might have been by a particle, because of those particles, there are 2 of those 5 particles I told you about.
Mm-hmm.
There are 2 that come from radioactive worlds. I mean, and they have high level of radioactivity. So when those particles open, thankfully they don't open very long. They're normally open and shut in just a minute or 2. But when they are open, they let out a high amount of radioactive energy. And that can have instant effects on people, from blistering to bulges on type of thing. So those type of things again, this is my speculation. I don't know for sure because I wasn't there and don't see that. But my speculation is that at that time they were near one of the particle openings that was letting a lot of radioactivity through, and so it caused that type of effect for them. Now, I should also say that the particle entrances are not stable. So they may be here one time, and the next time they open, they may be 100 yards away from there, or 200 yards, or 500 yards. And so just do keep in mind that the particle entrances move. So like, for instance, they may measure a high level of radioactivity at one point at one location, and that may be from one of those radioactive particles that is open. And then the next time they don't measure anything, well, what happened? Well, either the particle's closed and it may open again in the exact same spot some future point, or the particle's moved and it's not there at that spot anymore.
What about the title, Skinwalker? Because I was listening to the history, what they said, it was between 2 Indian tribes who are fighting with each other, which, you know, I think it's a little speculation. And then one of them cursed the other tribe and they cursed the land. Is that true? No. Okay, that's what I thought. Okay. That's just well, I think what happens is that when strange things occur that cannot be explained by normal means, then people look for unnormal means to explain them. Yeah. So in this time frame on Earth, people are very familiar because of movies and television shows and books about alien races and paranormal. That's a very big thing. And so now, if something strange happens, then they look, well, this must have something to do with aliens, perhaps, or things like that. But back in the earlier days, when you were talking about the Native American tribes, then they didn't think about that in that term. So they would think, well, in their religious beliefs and their mythology, how would they explain this? Well, then a skinwalker is an explanation to, well, this is how we can explain these strange events that are occurring. So, for instance, cattle being killed is a very perfect example of that. When a cow is killed or any type of beast is killed, and they can't determine how that beast was killed, they don't see footprints or things like that around the beast. Well, it doesn't mean that there wasn't something there that was killing it that did have footprints. It just didn't get left the type of terrain that it was there. And so they make an explanation that will fit within their understanding, and that's where Skinwalker explanation comes from.
And the cattle.
Thank you.
You had explained about why the cattle would suddenly dash across the
Oh
field.
yeah, that was
And
the sun.
Explain that briefly. Right, one
Well,
of those
all right.
portals.
So yeah, you're going to see times, and again, this is not just on the Skinwalker Ranch, it occurs in other places as well. But there will be times when you have a herd of cows. That's a very good biological measuring device, is the herd of cows, because normally cows are extremely placid. I mean, you drive around your countryside and you see a herd of cows, and they're either eating or sleeping or standing still. They don't move around a lot unless they're far store, unless they're very frightened about something or trying to get away from something. So those type of things have occurred on that Skinwalker Ranch, where all of a sudden the herd of cows will all start running away somewhere, or they'll go as far into a corner of a fence as they can do, and they'll be all crowded together. And those are instances where portals are opening near where the cows are and are letting an energy through that's very disruptive to them. Now, animals, unlike humans, because humans tune things out. So if you didn't tune things out, then you'd feel all these energies the same as the animals do, and you would react to them. You'd move away from energies that were harmful, just as a natural inclination. But as a human being in your modern world, with all your computers and electromagnetic frequency waves around you, you just tend to ignore all that. So you just sit there and you continue to work, and you're being bombarded by these different energies, and you just ignore them and do your thing. Animals aren't like that. Animals are very reactive, because for them, it's self-preservation. If something occurs that they don't understand, and then their immediate reaction is fear, and to run and get away from it. So it doesn't have to be something that they see. It can be something that they feel. So if all of a sudden they feel something abnormal, anything at all, could be all of a sudden it's 20 degrees hotter where they were than it was just seconds ago. Like the temperature changed up or down 20 degrees. They're going to run away from that because they don't understand why that would happen. If they feel radiation, if one of the portals open that has radiation, they're going to immediately run away from that and get as far away from it as possible. That's actually one of the best scientific instruments that they have at the Skinwalker Ranch, is their herd of cows.
And there was something fascinating. You had spoken of one of the portals does, when it opens, it has a direct connection to the sun, our sun. Can you talk a bit about that?
Well, that's the sun energy has a lot of different energies that come through. And so that can be a very intense heat that comes through like that. But it's very brief, like 1 second. It's done. That portal is very quick.
Doesn't stay open. That's good.
Right, but it's like if any of you have ever had hot flashes, so you can imagine if you just walk, especially if you don't normally experience hot flashes, you're just walking around and all of a sudden it feels like you're just getting the most intense heat on you, but then it's gone. And that's going to be frightening to you. But because it's gone, as a human, you're going to, okay, well, don't know what that was. I'll just keep going about my day. But if you're a cow, oh, that's very frightening. You want to get away from that spot as fast as possible.
Fascinating.
All right, are we done talking about that? More questions?
There was on that show, they talk a lot about seeing UFOs. Like there's a lot of lights they say they see in the sky, or something they catch on camera that's kind of blurry, and they assume it's a UFO. Are they really seeing UFOs, or what would that be?
Great question. And the answer is yes and no. Some of the things they see are not UFOs, as I talked about earlier, about the high power lines that are up on that mesa, and that actually can cause a lot of, if you see like a large glowing mass, not a little thing, but a large glowing mass that moves, that's almost certainly related to the high power lines. But if you see a little teeny white dot that's going across the sky in an erratic way, that's not possible for Earth ships to do, and that's very likely a UFO. And now here's the thing. They're seeing that type of thing on the Skinwalker Ranch because they're looking for it. Guess what? You could see the same thing right where you live, as long as you're not in a city. If you're in a city, there's too many lights. But if you're someplace that's out in a rural area that doesn't have a lot of city lights to dull the night sky, and if you spend some time looking at the sky in the day or the night, either one, as long as you don't have lights at night that are from the city that are dulling what you can see in the night sky, or in the daytime, you don't have a lot of smog that's dulling what you can see in the sky. I tell you that you can live wherever you want to live. You can live in Europe, you can live in Africa, you can live in Australia, you can live in the United States or somewhere in South America or Japan or anywhere that you want to live. And you can look up in the sky day or night. And if you do that often enough, let's say you spent let's say that 5 times during the day, well, not enough, 4 times during the day, at different times of the day, you look up into the different parts of the daytime sky, and also at night, do the same type of thing. You're going to see some interesting phenomena. Now, if you're doing it at night, you're going to see a lot of things that are just satellites in space, and you need to understand how that. So if it's a satellite, it'll look like a little star, and it just keeps going across the sky at a very steady rate, going around and around and around like that. That's a satellite, so don't confuse that. It might be your space station. That shows up a lot. It's quite large in the sky. The reflection of the sun off the space station, that's what you're seeing, just like the sun reflects off the moon. That's why you see the moon. So it's the same type of thing. So if it's going like that, you're just seeing a satellite or the space station. But if you're seeing lights that are moving in weird ways that aren't going in a linear way, but they're up and down and all around, or even just a little bit of movement, then that's a UFO. And there's a lot of them. There's over 100 at any one time. There's over 100 crafts from other places besides your solar system that love to observe this planet. And if you want to see them, you can see them at random, like I was just talking about. You can actually cause them. So for instance, when they shoot a rocket into the sky, that attracts attention right away. And so anytime that you do something that's in the sky, you're going to attract attention. So if you shoot a rocket up, even if you shine a very bright light, you take one of your laser beams as an example, and your little pinpointer laser beam, you shine that up in the sky and move it around a lot, that's going to attract some alien attention, and they're going to come over to see what's going on up there. You can even take a very powerful flashlight, just a regular light, but very powerful, and shine it up and move it around, blink it on and off, and that attracts attention. So if you actually want to see the same type of UFOs, the little white spot UFOs that they show in that Skinwalker Ranch program, you can do that right where you live, as long as you don't live in the middle of a city. Again, there's too much lights and confusion energy to see it. But if you live in a city, you could go visit a rural area, you can see it. So just take anything that you want to do and do some kind of disturbance up in the sky, and keep an eye out, because what will happen is those little white lights, what they are, they're actually not spacecraft, they're probes. So what happens, those are not the alien spacecraft. Those are far, far beyond. But what they can do is that if they see a disturbance somewhere, they want to know what is causing that. And so as soon as you make some kind of disturbance up in the sky that's abnormal, then it's very common that you're going to very quickly see some of those, one or more of those little white dots moving around in the sky. And day or night, it's going to be the same. But day is great because then you can see them in the daytime. It's a lot easier. But that is one or more of those alien races sending little probes to see what's causing that disturbance in the sky. And that's why you see them blink there, and they're there for a few seconds and move around, then they're gone. Because they're just there to observe. Once they see what it is, then they don't have any interest in hanging around, and they're gone. And
can we make a probe trap? That'd be fun.
Well, you can't catch them because they're, as I said, they mostly do these things by transportation. So that's why they appear and disappear. It's not like they have to come by propulsion to this location and go by propulsion to leave. So does that answer that question, sir?
Yes, it does. Thank you, Philos.
You're welcome.
Have we shared with you the time we were driving south of here? Oh, and
we saw the spaceship. Yeah, that was awesome.
Thank you. Thank you, Philos. So honored to be here with us. Thank you very much. And I would just like to remind you that one of the subject was World War II, which is interesting for me, especially World War III or II, I don't know. I thought maybe you would like to talk about Hitler and all the evil, but some kind of world war you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, well, I did not talk about Hitler because that's the past. It's not useful to dwell on the past at that point. But yeah, the future, World War III, I could talk about that if you are all finished asking questions about the Skinwalker Ranch. All right, so yes, World War III. All right, so World War III. Why would we call anything a world war? Well, a world war is one in which multiple countries align with each other to fight against other multiple countries that have aligned with each other. So that becomes what we call a world war because it's over large expanses of the globe versus just a localized incident. So for instance, right now, Russia and the Ukraine are fighting a war in the country of Ukraine. So that's a war, but it's not a world war because it's all taking place inside the country of Ukraine. However, if that expanded and other countries aligned with Ukraine and were actually actively fighting, and other countries are aligned with Russia and were actively fighting, then it becomes a world war. Well, in fact, this is something that I know that you've been told multiple times about the possibilities of the future that you need to be prepared for. And so this is really something that I just want to speak about as well. And your world is in a very precarious place right now. And I know that one of the guiding principles of relationships on Earth is that when you're in a group setting, such as we are here, you don't talk about sex, politics, or religion, because that offends somebody somewhere. And I hope that none of you are offended when I speak, because you're in a religious setting here, you're in Celestine life, so that's already one of the three. I think sex is on our agenda today too, so that's another one. And politics here is the third one, because that's what wars are all about. Wars are just the final card that's played for politics. So if you have let's take the Russia-Ukraine just as an example. And so in this case, you have, remember before there was the current country of Russia, there was a much larger country of the Soviet Union that included many of the Eastern European countries that exist today that were either part of the Soviet Union or within the Soviet Warsaw Bloc, that basically they were just slave countries of that country. And so the president of Russia, Mr. Putin, he decides that he wants to reconstitute this greater Russia. And the first big goal there is the Ukraine, because historically he feels that they are supposed to be Russians, not Ukrainians. And they just don't understand that yet. So he wants to make sure they do. And so he wants to capture that country from a political standpoint. And he would much prefer that to have happened without any shots being fired, and without any war taking place. He would just expect, well, Ukrainians, you used to be part of Russia, you should be part of Russia. This would be so much better for you. Don't you want to do that? And in his understanding, why would they not want to do something like that? Well, the Ukrainians say, we don't want to be part of Russia. We like being an independent country and determining our own future. We actually feel more closely aligned with Europe and the European Union. That's who we want to be with. Well, Putin says, no. So if he can't achieve his means by political means, then the last card he has to play is, all right, if you won't join us voluntarily, we're going to go to war and take over your country, and you're going to become part of Russia, whether you like it or not. And so that's where war comes into play. Now, where war expands, and this is your danger of World War III, is when you have actors who support one side over the other to a great degree, even willing to fight in battles for that. So on the one side, you have NATO, which is an alignment of almost 30 countries in the European sphere, of Western sphere, that have a military alliance that if one of those countries is attacked, then they all respond militarily. That's actually a great danger, even now in this Russian-Ukrainian conflict, that could occur, because the Western countries are supplying Ukraine with weapons that have actually killed over 30,000 Russians already in this war. an even greater number of Ukrainians have died. You don't hear about that so much, I think, but the fact is, there's a lot of casualties in this war so far, not including the civilian, just the military people. And so because the only reason that Ukraine is capable of fighting back against the much larger and powerful army of Russia is because they are being supplied with a steady stream of advanced weapons from the European countries and the United States. And so this gives them the capability to fight back, which they wouldn't have had before. Their country would have, without the supply of weapons, there would be no Ukraine already. And so if you're Putin and you see all these Western countries supplying weapons that are killing all his Russian soldiers and blowing up all their ammunition dumps and sinking their ships, he says, what I need to do is go attack these countries and take out their ability to supply Ukraine with all these advanced weapons. And so that's something that percolates in his head. Now, the Taz have been being very successful in Ukraine and tamping down any nuclear ambitions. And that is still a potential problem because it only reaches a point where Putin only says, all right, we'll have to win. There's no turning back, you see. This is the point, I think, as people don't realize, is that concept of losing face, which is an Asian concept, but it actually is applied everywhere. People may not call it that, but it's the same thing, is that once you commit to a course of action, there's no way that Ukraine can defeat Russia. And so why, at this point where Russia's lost so many soldiers and so much military equipment, to turn back and say, okay, well, we're gonna just go back to our borders and keep it the way it was originally, that will never happen. They would lose too much face. They would lose credibility on the world stage. And so they have to continue forward. And this becomes problematic as a potential World War III because you have Iran, North Korea, and China that are all aligned with Russia. Now, they have not involved themselves actively in fighting, but that can change and has a great potential to change as Russia decides they need to do something more to win this war. So, for instance, as a recent thing, as I mentioned, there's been tens of thousands of Russian soldiers killed and another tens of thousands that are wounded and can't fight anymore. A lot of equipment blown up. So Russia has been losing the ability to continue to wage the war. They don't have the soldiers to do it without calling up a general. We're going to war now, so we're going to call up everybody to be soldiers. They haven't done that. So just with their existing army, without calling up new conscripts, they're not capable of continuing to capture the whole country of Ukraine, or even to keep what they've already captured, which is about 25% of the eastern and southern part. So guess what? North Korea, we all know how wonderful North Korea is. The dictator of North Korea recently told Russia he would be happy to send as many as 100,000 North Korean soldiers to fight on the side of Russia against Ukraine. Well, that would be a tide turner if that occurred. But the very fact that he made the offer shows the danger here of the war exploding beyond that borders. So if North Korea or any other country sent thousands of soldiers to fight, tens of thousands of soldiers to fight on the side of Russia, that would be the same thing as NATO sending tens of thousands of soldiers to fight on the side of Ukraine, and it's going to blow that up bigger. Now, Iran is another country here that's part of this alliance with Russia, and they have because Russia was running out of things to fight with, so Iran's offered to send them hundreds, and they already have, and they already are using them just in this last week, hundreds of military drones that can drop bombs on the Ukrainians from above without any personnel having to be involved. So they're actively involved now in it as well. And China is financing all of this. Russia is under a lot of sanctions, and they can't sell their oil, they can't sell this, can't sell that. So China's been saying, oh, no problem, we'll buy it all from you at a discount price. It's good business. And India, who is also a lot more closely aligned with Russia than people realize, is the same thing, is that they're saying, oh yeah, we'll buy your oil at a discounted price and forget the sanctions. We don't care about those. Just send us all the oil that we need. And so that's supporting that effort. And then again, going back to India, people say, well, why is India, which would seem to be a democratic country that has elections and would be more closely aligned with the West? Well, that's true of in many cases, but militarily, all their military equipment is from Russia. So if they want to be able to fight a war with, if they get in a war with Pakistan, their next door neighbor, or whatever, all their weapons are from Russia almost exclusively. So they need to keep a very good relationship with Russia to make sure that their military can function. Anyway, so I don't want to talk more about that subject, just other than to say that you need to be more prepared. And that's why this issue even comes up. Your future in Europe and Africa and Asia and the United States, everything is subject to change. Nothing is set in concrete. So when I say things, I'm telling you what the projected outcome is based upon current circumstances. Well, current circumstances say that you have a very high likelihood of having an expanded war. So it's not just Russia. China wants Taiwan as well. China also wants to have all the South China Sea and all of the islands, all of the natural resources, whereas other countries around the South China Sea, from Vietnam and Indonesia and Japan, that all of these and many other countries, as in Malaysia, they say, wait a minute, the Chinese are taking our resources, our part of the sea. So there's a lot of conflict there. The biggest conflict, of course, is Taiwan. I think people don't realize the significance. There's a lot of attention being focused right now on Ukraine and Russia, where the bigger picture is actually happening over in China. China is far more powerful economically and militarily than Russia is. And again, going back to the concept of losing face, the president of China is determined to bring Taiwan, which has always been an independent country and has never been part of China, ever. But China considers it a province of China, even though it's never actually been part of China. And they are determined to make it part of China officially and get it under their control. Because right now it's an independent country, has its own military, and it's an economic powerhouse in the world. China has made it so that it's ostracized by all the countries, because China will say, well, if you want to do business in our great big country with 1.5 million people and potential customers, then you cannot have diplomatic relations with Taiwan or anything else. So most countries in the world abide by that because they want to have relations with the bigger China. But Taiwan, 23 million people live there, not very many people. But they are an economic powerhouse. And the most important thing they power is your little silicon wafers that you go in all of your computers. So there's only 2 places in the world that make the highest quality, highest end chips for computers. These are computers that, from your desktop computer to your key fob on your car that you can start your car from a distance, to your anything else that uses a computer chip, which is about everything, modern piece of equipment. 70% of those chips come from Taiwan, and the other 30% come from South Korea, and almost none come from anywhere else in the world. So those are talking about the high quality chips. And so those 2 places, South Korea, well, guess what? Who's north of South Korea? North Korea. Who's north of North Korea? China. And then Taiwan, there you go, across the strait of water. It's not very far away. So within China's sphere of influence is the capability to grab hold of the market of computer chips. So guess what? If you have the computer chips, you hold the world by its balls, so to speak, because, sorry for that. But anyway, the thing is that all of your modern military weapons, all the missiles and things like everything that uses GPS doesn't work without computer chips. And so if you control the computer chips, you control the world. And China is on a very great path of controlling as many of these resources that the world needs for everything. So 90% of the special rare earth elements that are used in all types of equipment are essential, even though they're a very small part of that. They come from either China or from countries controlled by China, that the mines are controlled by China. So this is a bigger issue. And China, Taiwan is not going to voluntarily give themselves up to China. Not going to happen. So it becomes almost inevitable that there will be a military attack on Taiwan. Now, your President Biden, recently even said that if that happens, the United States will defend Taiwan. Well, why would the United States want to go all the way across the world to defend a country of 23 million people? Because that country has the computer chip factory that makes everything in the United States well. That's why. And so if China attacks militarily, there's very high likelihood that other countries like Japan and the United States and Australia and even other countries in the South China Sea will attack China. So again, the potential here is great. So what does that mean for you? It means you need to be prepared. It doesn't mean that you get fearful. It doesn't mean that you hide under a rock. You go about your life and take joy in every single day, but you're also prepared more. It means that if you have things that are sitting around in your garage that you never use, or down in that's been in a storage box for 10 years and you never open the box, it's time to start selling those items and getting a little bit of extra cash so that you have more freedom. If you look at your financial budget and you look at your, this is what my budget is, and actually look at it, break down, where are you spending your money every month? $12 here, $10 here for automatic subscriptions. Here's something you signed up for an annual subscription, you haven't used it for 3 years, probably time to cancel that subscription. So anything that you can do to help yourself have more disposable income, less bills, get rid of things you don't need, those are all going to be useful things. Even if nothing happens, that's useful. That's the good point about that. So even if nothing bad happens, the fact that you made your finances tighter, got rid of things you didn't need, that's just going to help you in your everyday life. So I'm done talking about that subject.
That's great. All right.
I hope I'm not boring everybody too much. I know I get so long-winded and they're falling asleep probably. I don't know.
No, thank you. It's a beautiful talk.
What would you like to hear about next? What's on my list?
What were you talking about with sex? What was that about?
Sex. Everyone needs more of it. All right. So, okay. So let me talk about sex. That's actually a very important subject. So everyone's familiar with the energy centers. And you're familiar that your top center, these are the major centers. The top center is your Z, which is responsible primarily for your psychic abilities, but also for your communicating abilities with Elohim. Is also from your Z. So that's a very important center. And then at the other opposite end, you have your VIMs. Now, the interesting thing about the VIM is the only energy center that actually has two components, VIM 1 and VIM 2. So VIM 1 is your sexual center. So anything that has to do with sex is in the VIM 1. VIM 2 is the creative center. So if you're an artist or a musician or a dancer, anything that you have to create something, or maybe you're just, you manufacture products and you have to figure out how to do that. So any creative process, that process, of course, works in your car. Your brain has to think about how to do that, but it's stimulated by your VIM 2. And so why do you have VIM 1 and you have VIM 2? First of all, what's the importance of the VIM in the first place? Well, the psychic center and your VIM center, being they are the bookends of all the other energy centers in between, they're extremely important. And yet they are two most often out of whack energy centers in most people. So if you were to look at the health of the various energy centers in your body, and you say, okay, well, here's my heart center, here's my core center, here's my physical center, and you look at the health of those, in almost most every person, those are going to be more healthy than their VIM or their Z. Why? Well, let's look at the Z. The Z is primarily for communicating with higher beings, higher sources, particularly Elohim, but any kind of higher being. If you're talking to me, you're using your Z. And any of your psychic abilities. So you have all these great abilities, but most people never, ever use even a 1/1000th of 1% of those abilities. They wish they did. They wish they hadn't. They see movies about them. They say, oh, I want to be able to do that, but they never make it happen. Well, why is that? The desire is there, but why does it never happen? Well, in order for that type of thing to happen in the Z, you have to have activity in the dim. Those are resonant energy centers. So let's go back, and we're going to go back to the Z in a minute, but let's go back to the Vim. So the Vim 1 and Vim 2, you have basically, this is a blessing. You have two ways to stimulate your Vim energy center and make it expand and grow and spin faster, which in turn is going to affect all the energy centers in between, but particularly the other bookend, the Z center, is also going to start spinning faster and bigger and expand because of the Vim. And it works the opposite way too, if you did the same thing with the Z. But it's a lot easier to do it through the Vim than it is to do through the Z in reverse. All right, so you are blessed here because for one reason or another, a lot of people are sexually repressed. Now I should tell you that among Celestines, there's not a lot of sexual repression. People think about, oh, Celestines on religious type of things, and so they must be all like prudes or prunes. And that's just the opposite of the case. A lot of sexual activity in the Celestine kingdom, but the reason for that is it is a created energy. There's also a lot of artistic things that occur in the Celestine kingdom because it is a created energy of the Vim, and that's a very important energy. You have a choice. You have a choice. Do you want to stimulate your Vim sexually, or do you want to stimulate your Vim through creative expression? Or do you want to do both? Because you can do both as well. But if for some reason you're in a place in your life that you don't have sex with anyone else or with yourself, and it's just kind of a dead energy center for you for that, well, that's all right, because you can still go to the creative aspect and you can start, well, what can I do that's creative, that's actually making me think about being creative, whether it's, am I doing a piece of art, am I painting a picture, doing a drawing, doing a sculpture, or am I writing a piece of music, a musical scar, or am I designing a shed, and I have to decide how to do this shed. I want to build this shed, and I need to, this part needs to be this size, and that part needs to be that size, and this part needs to be this piece of lumber, and I'm going to need these type of fastening materials. That's a creative expression as well. It doesn't have to be an artistic creative expression. Anything that makes you think about creating something that didn't exist before, from a shed to a musical scar to a dance routine to a piece of artwork that you're drawing, that's all creative expression. It's all part of your Vim. So if you stimulate your Vim through either Vim 1 or Vim 2, that's a very, very good thing. I want you to look at your lives right now, your life right now. Are you stimulating your Vim? Either Vim 1 or Vim 2. If you're not doing it in a very everyday way, and I don't mean once a week, I mean every single day, you're stimulating Vim 1 or Vim 2, or both of them, one way or the other, then you need to do that. It'll make a huge difference in your capacity of your Z and the activity of all your other energy centers. So this is a very great piece of advice. I please ask you not to ignore it. Look at your life and realistically and say, are you in a place that you can increase Vim 1? Or are you in a place that you can increase Vim 2 activities? So for instance, if you're increasing Vim 2 activities, then you're looking at what can you do that's a creative force, that you're creating something that didn't exist before. I've gone through all of the type of things as examples, so you know what I'm talking about. So even if you think, well, I am not a creative person, I can't do art, I can't do that, I can't write music, I can't, you can, just start. Even if you think you've never done any of those things before, maybe you think you're a terrible artist, you can't draw anything, start, try it, practice, create something. Even if you draw, scribble, there's a flower, okay, well, there's the stem, there's the petals that are there's the middle, there's some leaves. You just created something from nothing, all right? So now make a whole garden, draw the whole garden. So do it, start, and don't prejudge yourself saying you can't do something. And with Vim 1, it's the same. Don't prejudge yourself saying you can't do this sexually or can't do that sexually. If there's no can't do's, as long as you're not hurting yourself or hurting someone else, anything else you choose to do in Vim 1 is fine, as long as it's not taking you down a bad path. And there is a tightrope there. I'll talk about that in a moment. But on the creative side, Vim 2, please try. Even if you think you're not creative, draw something simple like a flower and go from there. Vim 1. All right, there's a tremendous amount of sexual repression in this world, especially among religious people. It's sad because that sexual repression, it affects all the life. Now, you may be by yourself. You may be with a partner that you don't have sexual relations with anymore. If that's the case, that's not something to cry about. You always can have sex with yourself. There's nothing wrong with that. And so please don't be sexually repressed and say, oh, well, I can't do that. You know, yes, you can. If you need to have some kind of sexual expression or creative. I shouldn't say you need to have sexual, because you can have Vim 2 and you can totally ignore your Vim 1 if you want. That's your choice. But what I just want you to know is that there's nothing wrong with not ignoring your Vim 1. There's nothing wrong with having some sexual intimacy with someone that you love. There's nothing wrong with, if you don't have that person available, having some sexual intimacy with yourself, to have some sexual expression and release. Where the problem arises is that if you're doing anything to self-express your sexuality, the problem only arises if you're doing something that's hurting yourself, hurting someone else. Or so, for instance, let's take pornography. Pornography is something that can be all right to work with. It's all right if you have something that you're watching, something that's pornographic, that's stimulating you, as long as what you're watching is not demeaning to the people who made it. So, for instance, if you're watching some type of bondage movie, that's not a good thing. Even if the people say, oh, well, I'm a willing participant. Well, no, you're demeaning someone in that activity. You're putting them down or hurting them. Those are not good things. And so the problem arises, it's not that pornography itself is a bad thing. That can be a very stimulating thing, but it's very easy to go down a darker and darker path with that and end up having it be a bad thing. So if you use anything like that for stimulation of your mental thoughts and processes, that's not bad in itself unless you allow it to go down paths that are not respectful of the people that are the actors in the show, if you will. All right, so I talked about that subject enough?
I think so.
All right.
Yeah.
Hope I didn't scare everyone away.
No, I doubt you did.
No.
All right, so what's else on the, oh, community. I know that's something very important I wanted to talk about. All right, so again, I'm telling you these things so that you have the understanding of how to expand yourself, to become greater than you are right now. And that it all goes back to your energy centers. If your energy centers expand, you expand, as long as they expand in a balanced way. So for instance, if they're not balanced, let's say you're all into your physical body and that's all you do. You work out all the time, you get your physical body, but you never use your mind for anything. You ignore your Vim. This is not a good thing. So you may have a gigantic whiz, but it means nothing because like they say, the chain is only as strong as its weakest link. Well, your whole aura is only as strong as its weakest link. So that's a very important thing when you think about your energy centers. Is yes, the Vim is very important. The Z is very important because they're the bookends, but all the others are important too. You have to actually take time. What can I do to strengthen this energy center? What can I do to increase its power, expand its size, increase the rapidness of its spin? But how am I doing that in conjunction to the others? If I put too much emphasis on one area, am I ignoring the other? So I have one area really big and the other area really small. You're only as powerful as that one that's really small. So you have to focus on getting a balanced growth of your energy centers. Anyway, community is a big part of that. So you have a community right now. All of you gathered here on your Zoom call are a part of a community. But that's not an everyday community that you interact with. I really hope and pray that all of you can at some point have a real community that's a physical community that you all share and a closeness that you could see each other every day. But even those of you, for instance, those of you who live in larger cities, you're in a community of many people, many different cultures, many different races. You have a good advantage in that over people who live in rural areas. Rural areas are more peaceful and more serene, but they also can lead to stagnation of the energy centers. If you're in a larger city, just your daily life of having to commute and interact with all these different people, it causes you to have to expand yourself to be able to do that. And it expands all of your energy centers, because as you see, this may be a complete stranger that's standing next to you. Maybe you're riding, for instance, a subway train, and you're surrounded by all these people who you don't know, you're not speaking to, but they're different than you are. They're a different race, they're a different culture, they're a different body type. One may be fat, one may be skinny, one may be tall, one may be short. So you're exposed to all these different types of people on an everyday basis. And even if you don't think about speaking to them, maybe you don't ever talk to them, maybe you don't make eye contact with them, but you're still aurically, energetically relating to them. And you do, in fact, have to talk to some people some points. So you have to speak to people here, speak to people there. And the more you have to do that, the more you have to interrelate with people and situations, the more it helps all of your energy centers to grow. And this is a very important thing. Let's, regardless of where you live, let's assume that you have a job and you go and do your job and you come home after your job and you're tired. You worked a long day. You're tired. You just want to eat, watch a little TV, and go to sleep. And that becomes your routine. Go to work, come home, eat, do something for relaxation, like read a book or watch television, and then go to sleep. And that becomes every day, that's your routine. And during that day, you don't interact with many people. You see your coworkers at work perhaps, but maybe you work at home and you don't see coworkers at work. Or maybe you see coworkers at work, but you don't really interact with them in any way other than absolutely necessary for work purposes. You don't really get to know who they are, why they are, how they are. And so you have an extremely limited routine that's very closed. And so your aura does not grow from that. Your energy centers do not expand because of connections with other people. Now, on the other hand, if you go to work and you have to every day meet new people that you have to actually interact with and learn something about, and perhaps even create something together. And then you go from there and you have to go to the market, and now you're talking to the merchant from the market, and he's of a different ethnicity or culture than you are. And you have to talk and interrelate, and you can see how he is and he sees how you are. And then you go home, and instead of just eating and sleeping, you sit down and you start working on some creative project rather than watching television. You start doing something that's stimulating your Vim too. Well, all of these things are extremely expansive of all your energy centers. And this is what community does for you, especially if you're talking about a community of diversity. So for instance, you're a diverse group. You have people of different cultures, you have people of different races, and you're all together. And if you are all together in a physical community, that constant interaction of some things you have in common, some things you don't, it causes your energy centers to permanently expand as long as you're in that community. And I just want to stress, without talking too much, because I know I talk too much, but just want to stress the importance of community. If you can make that happen, for each one of you who are part of it, it will really help you expand. And why is that important? If you expand your energy centers in a balanced way, it gives you longevity, it gives you health, and I think of interest to most of you, it's going to give you much greater use of your psychic abilities. If you want to be able to do things that other people only think are fantasy, you can do those things. But you need to expand your whole auric field in order to have the capacity and grow that Z. Now, the one thing we haven't talked about, we talked about the VIMs and using creativity to expand things. The Z is another way. Well, how can you expand your Z? Well, if you're trying to expand your psychic abilities, there is a limited amount of things that you can do with that if you haven't also expanded your Vim. But the other way, just like there's Vim 1 and Vim 2, there's also, even though there's only one Z, and technically there's Z1 and Z2, because Z2 would be communication with higher beings. And there's a lot of ways you can do that. You can do that if you're just starting, you may do it with automatic writing. You need to know who you're talking to. You always need to make sure it's a higher being, an angel or Elohim is who you want to talk to. That's your safest bet. So if you're just learning how to communicate, talk with the angels of Elohim, you talk with your guardian angel. You can pray directly to Elohim, but this is how you expand the Z other than using the Vim, is that you can't necessarily expand your psychic abilities. You can practice a little bit and do something like that that's going to help a little bit, but the greater help is the part of the Z that allows you to communicate with higher beings, with your guardian angel, with stewardship angels, even with Elohim. So for your personal life, I would hope that each one of you would pray at least every day in solitude, just you and Elohim, if you're praying to Elohim, and then not in prayer, but just communicating with your guardian angel, communicating with a stewardship angel that might be able to help you in your life. And so if you're not doing that right now, I strongly encourage you to do that right now. Every day, communicate with higher beings. And if you don't have success at first, what is success? Success is communication, that you say something, they say something back to you, and you understand what the message is. And that message may not come audibly. It may come as an audible voice in your head. It may come as an audible voice in your ear. Or it may come by showing you some other way to answer that question. So for instance, 2 easy ways, if you're just learning how to do that, is 1, automatic writing, where you get a pen and a paper, and you don't look at the pen and paper, and you make contact with whoever you're trying to make contact with. Say your guardian angel. That's probably the easiest one for you to make contact with, is your guardian angel. And you ask them a question. I'm thinking about doing this. Is that a good idea? What's the way I should go about that? And then just start writing. Don't think about what you're writing. Just, even if it just seems like scribbles, it doesn't even have letters. Just start writing and start talking, and then write it down. Another really great way, if you don't want to try that, is to just open up the scriptures particularly, but any book will really do, but the scriptures are the best, is if you ask a question to your guardian angel or your stewardship angel, or even if you're speaking directly to Elohim and you want to have an answer, just open the book at random, put your finger on the spot and read what's there. And when that's working, which is easy to work, you're going to find a lot of answers as you read. Well, how does that relate to the question I just asked? If you think about it, it'll become very obvious. So when you do that, you're expanding your Z. And guess what? Now, as you've been regularly communicating, expanding your Z, all that psychic part of your Z, your psychic abilities, that's also becoming more and more available to you. And you can start experimenting with those more and have a great more success than you may have had in the past. All right, so I think I'm done with that part.
That was great. Great.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so I know I've taken a lot of your time today. Appreciate you being so patient with my rambling on and on. I try to give a lot of information, and I realize even as I'm giving it that it's probably making most people fall asleep, but it is what it is. So
it probably makes you fall asleep because it's mundane for you, but this is all cool stuff for us. Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
Does anybody else have any questions about anything, or did I leave something out on my list of things I was going to talk about?
Yeah, I don't have the list. Does anybody have the list?
Yeah, I have the list. Skinwalker Ranch, Community, Calamity Preparedness, World War III, and Sex.
Okay, I think I talked about all
of
those things.
Yeah, you did a great job.
Anybody else have any questions before I say goodbye? All right, bye group. All right, then I will say goodbye until I have the honor of meeting you again in the future, I hope. So, namaste, go on your lights with love and joy.
Namaste, dear Philos.
Namaste,
Thank you very
Philos.
much. Namaste.
So that was fascinating stuff.
I know.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes, it was.
So I guess.
Was everybody able to understand Philos?
I thought
Yeah,
I was, yep.
Yeah, I was in the perfect room for this. This is my creative room. You know, so it's like perfect.
Right.
Awesome.
Mhm.
Did he give you any information that was helpful for anybody?
Oh, yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, every information is helpful. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Well, good. Maybe we'll call him back more often. Now I don't have to prepare a lesson. It's great for me.
get asleep in a little bit.
Just we need to relax more when talking with Philos. Like we were closed when we talk to you, and then we get used to your energy, and we have you as a mentor, as a father, as a friend, and now we just have to get used to talking to Philos. Like there are so many interesting questions that I want to ask, but I don't know if they are interesting for our community, our family. Is it the right time? Like
how about this, everybody? As a homework assignment, go on MeWe and write down one question you've always wanted to know the answer about that Philos might have the answer to, and then we'll give that to Philos and see if he'll address that here coming up.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah, that's good.
It can be any subject whatsoever that you've always wanted to know the answer to. Never found on your own.
Okay.
Even if it's personal.
It's as long as it's something you don't mind sharing with other people in our group.
No, I don't.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I have an interesting one. Yeah.
When I say I should say personal, I'm not sure if Philos would answer any question that just pertain to you alone, but if it's something that would pertain to everybody in the group,
help other people.
Yeah, help other people in the group, then
yeah.
Because
there's a lot of personal questions that we would have that could also help somebody else. Yeah. So if it's totally personal and just relates to you and people in your sphere of influence outside of our group, then that wouldn't probably be one he would answer. But if it's something that would help everybody in our group to know the answer to that, then yeah, he would answer that problem. Cool. Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
You know, I think so. I'm reflecting on Philos's talk, and I look at our lives because we talk with Philos a lot and have for many, many years. And it's always actually amazing to me that he has so much patience with us because, and I'm hoping that you guys aren't as bad as us, because we've been told things so many times for our benefit, and it goes in one ear and out the other ear. We hear it and then we don't do it, and then we suffer the consequences for not doing it. And even though we've had that pattern where we're told something, we don't do it, we suffer the consequences for it, we still repeat that pattern. Not always, but many times, where we're told something, we don't act upon it, and then we later suffer. And it's like almost a crime to be able to have this kind of connection to a higher being that loves us and wants to give us information that's helpful to us, and takes the time to present that information to us, and then we don't act upon it. And then, for whatever reason. So I hope that you guys are better than us and have a higher percentage of things you act upon that Philos.
Well, in our defense, so often he gives us things that are like super complicated, or we needed a lot of money to do something. And it's like, well, we have to do this, to get this, to get that. And
or it doesn't appeal to us sometimes.
Well, that's not the case most of the time. But so I'm really looking forward to community, because I know that every single one of the things that he gives us, we can act upon right away, because there's a diversity of talent, knowledge, and skills that are required to do the things that he asks us to do. And another thing I was thinking about, my other life on 6, I'm really missing Philos, because I can't tell you how often I say, will you ask Philos this, or Les, or Miriam, and he doesn't do any of that there. It's a different person there. He's a Taz, and his mentor was Kadir, and so he goes to the library and he does more mental stuff than psychic stuff, and so that's an interesting.
I'll be glad to know that.
Can I ask something? Well, reading the oracles now, as with the question I asked about Moses, what actually happened in the exodus from Egypt to the Sinai desert, is it an interesting story for us to know what happened actually and in Sodom and Gomorrah? Did those towns actually existed? Is that story from the Christian Bible even true? Because Yeshua refers to some things about Lot when he talks to the people, when he gives a sermon about the truthfulness of the laws written by human and the laws from Elohim. Is this an important story for us?
Sodom and Gomorrah were real cities, and the account that's in the Christian Bible is mostly accurate.
And what destroyed them?
They were destroyed by meteorites. Meteor shower. But
was that done on purpose?
No.
But they were told not to look, though.
Right. And that when Lot's wife looked, she was turned to stone. That
she was turned to salt.
Salt, that's right. That would have been because of the energy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, actually, no. Shouldn't say no.
Oh.
Yes. She was turned to salt because she was basically, the way it's depicted in the Bible, you think like, here's a person, and now this person's there, but they're made of salt. That's not accurate. What happened is she was actually hit by a meteorite that was a high salt content, and that became a pile of what was mostly salt there, but it wasn't a person. It was just a pile of salt.
Salt. Make that very clear in the Bible.
And that was punishment for all the people who sinned there in those cities.
No, that part is not exactly accurate either. Elohim doesn't punish people like that. We're here in this life, how we live it, good or bad. It's such a short period of our eternal life that pretty much Elohim gives us a free rein to be as bad as we're going to end up being. Because our punishment is incurred upon ourselves. We're punishing ourselves by what happens to us after this life because of what we did in this life. So yes, Sodom and Gomorrah were extremely wicked cities. And that was a well-known fact to the people there. If you wanted to have any kind of debauchery or sin, Sodom or Gomorrah was a place to go. And so if you can think about in the world we live in, if you can think about the worst areas of town where there's lots of prostitution and lots of drugs and lots of people ruining their lives by the way they're living, that was good portions of Sodom and Gomorrah were like that. It just became what people aspired to. And so people who weren't like that, they left. They didn't live in Sodom and Gomorrah anymore. They left those towns because the energy there, the way people were, was so repulsive to them that even if their business was there and their livelihood was there and their family had lived there for generations, they couldn't stand to live there anymore. So they left. So when Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed, it was pretty much already nobody there that was worth keeping around as far as that. But it wasn't God that destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. It was an act of nature that destroyed it. But because of the people who lived there, because of the civilization that it had become, it was very easy to attribute that this was a punishment of God upon the city. When Lot's wife was turned a pile of salt, that's a very, that's punishment for disobedience. And so what happened is in those early days, particularly, in order to keep people in line, and you'll find this is true, the more primitive a culture is, the more this type of thing is true. And back then it was a pretty primitive culture still. So in order to keep people in line, they used religion to keep people in line.
you do what you're told, because that's what religion says, and that's what God has told religion. So you do what you're told. And if you don't do what you're told, these are the type of things that will happen to you. Your whole city might be destroyed. You might be turned to a pile of salt. You better do what you're told. And so that's the type of things that they would take natural events that they could in any way construe to be God's punishment on people for not doing what they were told. And that's how a lot of things like that are told in stories.
Thank you.
But weren't they warned to leave?
The good people, yeah, you better get out. You know, because that's the thing. Just like if we were going to get hit by a meteorite shower in Ashland, guess what? Philos is going to tell us, or Miriam's going to tell us, you got to leave, and you got to leave quick, because you know that town's about to be destroyed. And that's one of the great advantages of having those kind of connections. And you guys have that same advantage, because when I'm told something, and if it's something that would benefit you, pass it on. Or in this case today, Philos pass things on directly to you. So if there's major catastrophes, and he's talking about some pretty major catastrophes like World War III and the calamitous thing, that he's giving us forewarning so that we aren't damaged by those things like we would otherwise be. And it includes if there's a meteor shower that was coming and hadn't been spotted by NASA or anybody yet, Philos would let us know, hey, you better leave that vicinity, and you better do it within the next 24 hours or whatever. If there's a wildfire that's going to come up here, because we have wildfires all around, you know, we'll get warning about it. It's helpful.
Well, I have a funny story, just a comment about Philos, that the other day I was thanking him for all that he helps us with, and I call him our personal angel, and he says, oh, I'm no angel. He goes, I'd never want to be an angel, at least not at this point, because that's way too much work.
Well, he also says it's too one-dimensional for him too. All right, well, I think we're done for the day. Thank you all for taking your time out of your day to share with us. Very much appreciated. And I hope you all understood Philos well enough, and get him back here in the future, I hope.
Yeah.
Oh. Yep. We hope to.
Namaste.
Absolutely.
You guys are the best. I can't tell you how much I appreciate being able to see you every week, and sure would like it to be in person, but this is almost as good. This
is the next best thing.
So we're working on it. We're working on it.
Oh, and then,
I see it.
One quick thing. I told you I was working on this book, Secrets of Celestine Light Magic, and I had to kind of put that on a back burner for a little bit, because I had to actually work on work that makes me money for a little bit to pay our bills. So that kind of got put back. So I said it was going to come out in a couple of weeks. It's still going to come out soon, but not as quick as a couple of weeks.
Yeah, we'll make it before the holiday season. Or we want it out by October.
Well, hopefully before that. But yeah. Well, all right.
We'll do the best we can.
Love you guys. Namaste.
Yeah,
love you too. Namaste.
All right. Take care, everybody.
You too, brother.
Take care.